This panel, as we mentioned early before the break, will be focused on Rwanda's entrepreneurship ecosystem. We have people representing policy makers, we have an entrepreneur himself, we have business support services, we have people focused on climate and green growth. And so, with great pleasure, I'd like to welcome Alain, Alice, Okechukwu, Terry's, and Eves to the stage, as well as our moderator for today, Grace Mugabekazi. Yes.
Bemi, thank you so much for the welcome, and thank you for curating a very informative forum on entrepreneurship in Africa. So as has been rightfully introduced, this panel is going to try and make use of the next hour to shape and frame what's happening in Rwanda in terms of entrepreneurship development. Just to quickly introduce myself before I introduce my panelists, my name is Grace Mugabekazi. I lead on policy and programs at the Youth Connect Africa, which is now a 32-member strong initiative that's working with governments and national ecosystems across Africa to improve how we're serving youth development. Entrepreneurship is one of the things that we really focus on. And it's a real pleasure for us to get to participate in framing this conversation and asking the hard questions. Rwanda has positioned itself to be the African nation where innovators can launch with the vision to scale into Africa. Rwanda is emerging as a tourism hub, a technology hub, and a financial services hub. Rwanda is building a brand, one that is based on its ambitions for its people and also on consistency of delivery. Over the years, we've seen some incredible applications of innovation and technology to resolve real-life challenges that have emerged in Rwanda and are starting to grow across or work and apply in other parts of Africa. As we convene today, Rwanda has continued to set the pace in terms of making room for entrepreneurs to apply innovation in healthcare, delivery, government services, transportation, financial inclusion, to name a few. It was very inspiring to hear from the gentleman, a young entrepreneur who's working to address financial inclusion today. Entrepreneurship as a mechanism or a way of doing is incredibly important for emerging markets because it enables us to build fast and literally leapfrog into where we want to be by enabling different people to participate in building services, products, industry, and really also contributing to job creation. So how does entrepreneurship in Rwanda apply? And what does the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Rwanda look like? Joining me are the following speakers. I'll briefly introduce them, but during their interventions, they'll also get to tell us a bit more about the work they're doing. So let's start with the entrepreneur. We have Alain Kajangwe, who is the CEO of Wired In, and he'll tell us a bit more about Wired In and his journey to getting to where he is. He's also an alumni of CMU. We have Alice Munichinga, who is the country director of BPN, which has been working with entrepreneurs in Rwanda for the past 10 years. We have Danielle, who is the country representative in Rwanda of the Global Green Growth Institute that works both on policy and also on developing resilience in different markets. We have Therese Sekamana, who is the chairperson of the Women, Youth, and Person with Disabilities cluster within the Private Sector Federation. She is also an entrepreneur herself, quite a story to share. So we look forward to hearing from her. And then we have Eve Iradukunda, who is the permanent secretary of the Ministry of ICT and Innovation in Rwanda. So, not keeping you waiting any longer, I'd like to start with you, Alice. Reflecting on the past 10 years that you have spent working with entrepreneurs in Rwanda and also seeing this entrepreneurship ecosystem evolve. What would you say are the unique advantages that an entrepreneur who's starting in Rwanda has? And what gap do we still have to fill to enable them to grow? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I first take this opportunity to really commend this forum by Carnegie Mellon University, which is quite unique and a great platform that brings players across the continent. And yes, and at a time where it is really needed, where a lot has already happened. As you mentioned, we've been operating here in Rwanda for the past 10 years. We started off as an organization focusing on providing capacity building and access to finance to entrepreneurs. And very, very early, we realized that, in fact, that was not sufficient. At the time, 10 years ago, when, for those who are visiting Rwanda, I wish you could have a picture of how it was 10 years ago. So a lot has changed, not only in the scenery, but also in the whole ecosystem as such. When we talk about ecosystem, I see it at 3 different layers. The first layer being, looking at the basics. You need the basic infrastructure, you need safety, you need the basics to be able to function. Then the second layer are policies, laws. You need to be legally protected. You must be able to register your business. You must be protected against corruption and all that. That's the second layer, having the right institutions in place. And then the third layer, looking at the whole support system that is really focused on entrepreneurship. And that includes all the BDS services, the financial institutions that are putting in place products and services for entrepreneurs, the academia that is promoting entrepreneurship, and so on. And all the 3 layers over those 10 years have evolved tremendously. I believe there's no better place to be an entrepreneur than here in Rwanda, honestly speaking. But then it does not necessarily mean that it's very easy to do business as a young entrepreneur. Some of the challenges that the entrepreneurs face is that on one side, you do not have a lot of role models. We don't have a strong entrepreneurial history, background, that you have people to look up to, that you have other senior entrepreneurs who could mentor you. So as an entrepreneur, you end up being like a pioneer and you're digging your way, you're finding things out. It's a lot of try and error, which is not always very easy and requires a lot of resilience. Another challenge that I see evolving is now we have a lot of startup hubs that are well equipped, that are vibrant, that are really set up to support startups, especially in the tech space. But then to find a way to be sure that your idea will be market relevant. Sometimes when I discuss with those startups and the things that they are working on and all the energy, and I feel, is this going to sell? Or you're entering into a market that is already internationally extremely competitive. So those are challenges where I see that there is a need to provide technical guidance. So not only the BDS kind of services at the level of capacity building, mindset, access to finance, all that is very important. But I believe now we also need to invest in more of these technology and technical support so that these young people do not invest 3 years, 4 years, and find out at the end of the day, this is never going to fly. And it's a loss on both sides for these young talents, but also for the whole ecosystem in terms of investment. So that's another challenge that I see that, we need to address as we see more and more young people entering into entrepreneurship and looking at innovation and yes. So the other challenge I also see is for them to navigate all those opportunities. As an entrepreneur, you're supposed to be focused. But at the same time, there's a lot of opportunities, and maybe the services that are provided are a little bit distributed. I can get this from the university, I can get this from another place, so that you end up really losing the opportunity to sit down and focus and grow your business and grow your market share. And yes, so moving forward, coordination will be needed, maybe even regulation, kind of organizing ourselves to be able to support these young talents in the appropriate way that their full potential can blossom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elise. I think that's a very strong start to our conversation. You mentioned a very interesting element. You spoke to the need for enabling entrepreneurs to get it right from the get-go. So that's some food for thought to all the people in the room, academia, the service providers who can support further in terms of business development services, research and development around technology, and all of that. And you also talked about some form of regulation or coordination of the space. Now, speaking of regulation and policy, we're very pleased to have the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of ICT and Innovation. And Eve, you, as the ministry that has innovation under your volet, you see a lot of what's spurring in Rwanda. We see a lot of investments already being made. But what excites you about what's currently happening in the innovation and entrepreneurship space? And how is the government pushing the limits in terms of enabling entrepreneurship and innovation through policy?
First of all, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. This is a very important conversation. And I have to admit, at some point I tried entrepreneurship and not always succeeded early on. But in our work day to day, what excites me is to see that we have a youth that is daring to try, despite the challenges that comes with entrepreneurship. We have young people that are really eager to take every opportunity. And so this is an important conversation. And I think speaking to the part of the ministry, I think as a policy institution, we have to be part and parcel of what's happening in the ecosystem by providing the right policy landscape that enables startups to succeed. And so what I'm mostly excited about is, especially from a technology perspective, is the fact that most of the startups we are seeing are taking advantage of technology and specifically emerging technologies to think about solutions that can address issues not just in Rwanda, but also globally. And I say that because where we are headed as a global economy, we cannot just look at ideas that are focused on the local market. Thanks to technology, actually, these solutions can expand and go beyond our not small, but limited size of economy. So I think that's number one, is that what's happening is really the fact that more and more businesses either are using technology as a primary tool to solve the problems, or adopting technology to allow the scale that they need to be able to achieve in terms of market. The second thing, from a policy perspective, the ministry has been working with different partners to put in place policies that are geared toward startups support. If we look at the policies we've been discussing in the last 6 months to a year, so you have the technology-enabled policy, technology-enabled innovation policy that is looking at how can we encourage more startups to use technology, but also how do we provide incentives that allow them to benefit. Because unlike some of the traditional businesses, startups within technology may not necessarily have what I would say like hard assets or hard tangible assets. So these are usually ideas and with a young person on a laptop with the highest potential, but without necessarily ability to demonstrate in a tangible way, in the traditional way that whether it's the banks, the investors look at businesses. So these policies create incentives that allow them to actually compete and provide, have access to certain support, including funding. So that's one. Another one is the Startup Act, which will be actually be launched soon, that we've been discussing with actually the whole entrepreneurship ecosystem. This is also looking at incentives that we can give to the startups, and specifically the ones in technology, but also looking at across the board. So these two policies, in my opinion, will enable us as an ecosystem to have a more intentional intervention within the ecosystem. But again, policies alone cannot do it. And I think Alice set the stage with the different layers that you need to be able to have a competitive, productive ecosystem, is that you need the right policies, but then you also need a wider ecosystem of partners, all the way from ideation of businesses to the point when they scale. So I'm encouraged to see many of those partners in the room, and I'm eager to see how we continue to, be intentional within our programming, because what I've seen, even when there might be limited resources, they may not always be deployed to have an additionality effect to the ecosystem. So I'm really encouraged that we're having this conversation. And of course, as a ministry, we continue to understand what more can we do to support partners within the innovation ecosystem, entrepreneurship ecosystem, to understand what the startups need. But ultimately, it's really the collaboration of all of us to take these ideas and these startups forward.
Thank you very much, dear Eve, for that intervention that really Rwanda continues to push the limits and try to be a bit more agile in terms of enabling innovation and entrepreneurship to thrive. Our next panelist is an entrepreneur himself, and he is, I would say, one among the breed of entrepreneurs that are really pioneering, putting African talent on the global market. Alain, I would love to hear from you as an entrepreneur who's operating in Rwanda, serving clients across the world. What has worked in your favor in terms of being based in Rwanda? And could you speak particularly to the issue of talent and talent that's globally competitive in Africa? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Grace, for that question and for the kind introduction. I don't know about everything you said, whether that's indicative of who we are, but I appreciate that nonetheless. So just to speak a little bit about why I didn't, like Grace just said, we are, excuse me, we are a software development company founded in 2014, specifically because we saw an opportunity in outsourcing, offshore business, like some also like to call it, with clients. We started with clients in Japan. Relationship with Japan, I'll explain, is because basically my business partner is Japanese. So we started with that market where we were finding clients in Japan that were looking to have their software development done outside of Japan. And the main reason for that is cutting costs. That is why, for some of you who know why people do go into outsourcing, it's mainly for the bottom line, right? So it's in some cases cheaper to develop some of those software application in India, in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, the Philippines, China, right? And up to that point, very little was being done and actually still is being done on the African continent, right? So this is where I started off working with him as a freelance developer with him on some of those projects from 2011, and then it took us about 3 years to actually just figure each other out, right? Whether we really wanted to take it to the next level of actually being business partners. But the opportunities were there, right? I'll just throw one number out there that as we were going through the motions of learning the market and what I was actually involved in, I researched Japan spends, at that time, those numbers were for 2011 or 2012, I don't quite remember, but they were saying that in IT outsourcing, Japan was spending about $6 billion a year, right? And this is money basically leaving Japan to go pay off for some of the work that is being done for the Japanese market outside of Japan, right? Mainly in China, in India, Vietnam, all this place. So this was a huge number for me to grasp, but it kind of like painted a picture of the kind of opportunity that was out there. And this was something that I knew I could do personally. And then I quickly found out that there was actually enough resources, if trained correctly, if harnessed correctly, to actually do it at scale. So that's how Wired came into play. And then one of your question was what has worked for us to do it from Rwanda. So today we are not just looking or just servicing Japan as a market. We have also branched out into other market. We have clients in the US, we have clients in Europe, more specifically in the Netherlands, and of course we have some clients here in Rwanda as well. But those clients outside of Rwanda, the main way for them to find us, because we are not doing a lot of marketing ourselves to basically attract some of those projects our way, but some of those clients are actually finding us because they have heard of, like you called it, brand Rwanda. Then they get intrigued. What else can Rwanda be offering, right? So the Visit Rwanda campaign has been indirectly very beneficial to us. The fact that people are hearing that Rwanda is trying to position itself as a tech hub, as a financial hub, all this basically, we have seen people send us email out of the blue. I've received WhatsApp messages out of the blue with people saying, oh, we've Googled your company and we've noticed that you are doing this, this, and that. Would you be willing to, right? Literally some of for instance, the one client that we have from the Netherlands has been working with us for the past 4 years. Basically, that's how he found us, right? He heard about Rwanda through one of the campaigns that have been going on, and he's a technology company in the Netherlands, and they wanted to outsource a little bit of their work. Usually the first place that those companies look at is India. In Europe is mostly Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, before the war, obviously, but Slovakia, the Czech Republic, all these places were basically the niche places for some of the European companies to actually go and outsource. So now, your next question on the talent part is very hard to answer because, well, not very hard, but it's not as clear cut as everything else that I've just said. The market opportunity is definitely there. There's no question. It's there for everyone to see. Now, on the talent side, because those markets that we're trying to service are in need of, yes, low cost of production for their work. However, the quality of work needs to remain at par with what they're expected or what they are accustomed to in their markets. So obviously, a Japanese or an American company will not come to us, pay X amount, right? It's 3 times, it's 4 times less than what they would pay an engineer in their country, and then expect that the quality of work tanks, right? I don't think anybody who's in business would actually consider that a positive, right? So even though we have a lot of young people that are trained, a lot of it is still raw skill, right? Because it's one thing to do 4 years at university, but it's also another thing to be in an environment that actually helps you improve on those skills. And this is what is very much lacking. Our educational institutions do get unfairly, in my opinion, a bad rep, right? But it's not because they're not able to produce technically savvy graduates. But it's because if you look at the curriculum, it's exactly the same as what other universities around the world are giving. Now, the only difference is someone graduating from the US, from a US institution, immediately gets a job where they're onboarded on as a junior developer. They're mentored inside the company. They learn the company culture. They learn what the client really needs, not what it's written in theory. And then from there, you basically, year in, year out, you're improving yourself to the point where now you're able to qualify as a senior engineer. And in a way, this is what we need to work on the most, because there are not enough companies to actually onboard a lot of these young graduates, right? I think Rwanda graduates about 2,000 graduates every year in IT-related fields. Obviously, our market is not able to absorb that kind of number, right? And because we're not able to absorb that kind of number, we need to figure out a way to, get the jobs from outside, and then from there, figure out a way to train internally to the point where these engineers are to the point of senior level developers, right? There's another thing I would like to mention, but maybe I'll mention it later because it's from what the previous panel touched on the brain drain. Mm-hmm. I think remote outsourcing or IT outsourcing is one way to solve that issue, right? But we also need to be intentional, because you need to, in order to keep those people here, we also need to be intentional to actually give them the kind of advantages that really makes them want to stay here. By advantages, I mean, very, very well paid jobs, because that's literally what it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alain. So you just shared with us your journey of building a globally competitive company. Well done on what you're doing, and on ensuring that we're putting Rwanda on the map for talent. You also got us thinking about what we're doing to ensure that we are translating our graduates into competent, skilled persons who can get high-value jobs on the digital market. And you talked about ensuring that even the thinking around how we retain talent, because that's the secret. For us to actually get Africa on the map for its talent, we also need to ensure we're retaining the talent. So very interesting conversation. We now shifting from the digital space to what's emerging as a very important space in the development of Africa, and also affecting the rest of the world, and that is green growth. In my view, I think it's probably one of the few spaces where young people today have the opportunity to innovate, build from scratch, and bring those technology to market. So we have with us Daniel, who is from the Global Green Growth Institute. Daniel, could you please tell us more about why green growth is an avenue for opportunity for entrepreneurship to young people today? And also, what is available in Rwanda in terms of green entrepreneurship? Yeah.
Thank you for that question. First, I would like to say that at Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI, we are an intergovernmental organization that supports our members and partners to do the transition to a climate resilient green growth pathway. And what does that mean in regards to seeing green growth as maybe some people call it the new frontier, but I say it is for now. What does it mean for either a sector, a country to transition to a green growth pathway, and how does that affect businesses or entrepreneurship? I will say that if we look at it from three approaches, looking at it from the structure or the systems that are put in place in the way that our economies are grown, we need to make that shift, and this shift has to be fundamental. That is to say, if I'm starting my business, I shouldn't be thinking about the people that will make up the business as an afterthought. They should be at the center of what my business should be. That is what we call inclusive growth. If I'm starting a business, I shouldn't be thinking about the environment as an afterthought, because if my resources or raw materials are going to be extracted from the environment and these are not finite, then I should be taking it at the center of my business. If I'm thinking of my model from a financial perspective, how do I ensure that I budget all these two into what I do? And most times what we call business as usual uses the old structure and struggles to meet with the realities of today. So issues related to climate change, impacts that comes with it is now. I should even say it's yesterday. So green growth when it comes to entrepreneurship is something that we should put at the focus or at the basis of any planning, any modeling, any implementation that one has to deal with when you run your business. If we bring it back home to Rwanda, what we've done, we are really glad that we have an enabling environment where the policies are really strong. There is a strong political willingness to take that, make that transition, knowing that there are trade-offs. What we've done is to say there is quite a lot of startups, lots of entrepreneurs that are doing several things. How do we bring them together? And we started by setting up the usual boot camps to award green growth projects, in collaboration with government and other partners. But we realized that it's not sustainable because you throw out a couple of thousands to award the first, second, third winner, and you realize that they go out there, they struggle, they give up. We've heard it a lot in the past sections. And we said, how do we set up a network that looks at the broader ecosystem to say if Mr. A is doing this and Mr. B is also doing similar thing, how do they come talk together and realize that there is strength not only in partnership when it comes to paperwork, but in partnership when it comes to leveraging the strength you can have as a small business, as a one-man business, to that of expanding, to becoming, being able to access the resources you need. So we look at it from the capacity point of view. So green growth, we talk about sustainability, economic growth, social and environmental aspect of it that is inclusive. But you realize that countries' GDPs sometimes are growing, but jobs are not being created. Why? Because most businesses are still structured in the old way that it favors just few, while leaving out the most. So we said when we talk about capacity building, what are we missing? If you go to a typical or traditional acceleration hub or collaboration hub, they will teach you the real thing that is taught sometimes in school. But most times nobody teaches you the human skills that leads to sustainability. I use practical examples. some of the things we realized when we were dealing with the focal groups within the network is someone says, I am starting a business that will ensure that I grow cash crops, crops that could be sold not only in the market here, but could be exported. But I realized that the soils are not that, fertile to support the growth of the yield. And what is the next big thing to do? You pump in a lot of chemical fertilizers. Whereas Mrs. B, who is also in a startup business that is dealing with livestock dairy, needs water to grow the livestock. And my chemical fertilizer gets washed away, goes into downstream, and my colleague who is also struggling to set up, loses her business. So how do we look at the structure from a very, system approach where you look at the whole value chain and say the policies are good, maybe the projects are very solid, why is implementation not happening? And that comes to resources. A lot of times when we interview entrepreneurs within the network, the first thing that they shoot their hands on is finance. We learn a lot about climate finance. Rightly so, this is a huge challenge. But you realize that when most businesses receive that finance, they still go back to that challenge of not understanding that I need to look at it beyond just my bank account, but I need to look at it, with what my colleague is doing, what is the whole system looking at when it comes to entrepreneurship. But also capacity building, when I talk of human skill that will lead you to sustainability, has to also deal with the institutions. If the banks are still operating where they are interested in giving money to only real estate developers or factories that are setting up businesses to buy and sell, and not to agriculture or tech entrepreneurs because their scale is small or they don't understand, then capacity building needs to be done at that institutional level. So this is the type of work that we are doing, and greatly, I'm amazed by the fact that when we started and said, let's not keep it at Kigali. We want to go to the Western Province. We want to talk to people in the Northern Province, Eastern Province. We were really shocked that people are hearing a lot about what is happening in Kigali, but sometimes feel that they are left out. And also maybe the technical jargon that is used in the entrepreneurship space makes it look as if they are not ready. But the network is encouraging them to say, what you are doing is good. You have an opportunity to step it up and connect even with your peers who are in Kigali. I will keep it at that for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel. So I heard a number of things. I heard you say that new technology development should be sustainable, it should be green. I heard you talk about the fact that we need to have a human side to sustainability, so ensuring that businesses are thinking about how they're taking, are being inclusive of people, because that's also an element of sustainability. I also heard you talk about climate financing, and how that is helping unlock new technology solutions, as well as agriculture. And you talked about the need to spread the wings for the ecosystem to ensure that it's inclusive as well. So I think this is a good transition to our next panelist, who is I was going to say coincidence, who happens to be an entrepreneur in the energy sector, and who is also here not just to share about her own journey and how the ecosystem has enabled her to emerge as an entrepreneur in the energy sector, but also to talk about the work that the Private Sector Federation is doing to ensure that it's building an ecosystem for women, youth, and people living with people with disability. Thank you. Therese.
Thank you, Grace. And thank you very much for the organizer. This is really a great initiative. Talking about my journey, I've been abroad for more than 20 years. Then I had to come back home, and I came back with an idea. what we were hearing from abroad. They were saying we have energy shortage in Rwanda. So there was LED light in Europe. It was very new as well. Then I said, let me go back with my idea because I think it can help. And that's where he said that Rwanda, it's a brand and the ecosystem is really well built. I went to the expo where I really encourage people to go, got the award of innovation, and from there was really easy to sell because I had already the, let's say, the validation of the private sector. Then, a few years later, I went into production. Again, saying that the ecosystem is well built, anyone can go for a tender. It was an international tender. I'm not an engineer. My background is business. I learned business. I'm not a technician person. But since I had that determination and saying, this is a great opportunity, let me try. Let's see, how do we build a hydropower plant? Let's go back to the source where I was coming from. Let's see how they manage a power plant. Then I came back, went through the tender like everyone. I got awarded 2 hydropower plants with 25 years power purchase agreement with the government, and I'm thankful.
Yeah.
So to go back again to Rwanda, the money I got was from BRD, which is the Rwanda Development Bank, with the collateral from BDF, which is also a Rwandan organization. But also I got the support from the World Bank through a program where they were supporting green energy in Rwanda, then GIZ through another kind of program supporting green energy. So today, I'm giving back to the society. I'm the chairperson, as Grace said, of the Specialized Cluster, which is an umbrella organization for women, youth, and persons with disability, entrepreneurs, under the Private Sector Federation. What are we doing? It's very easy to open a company in Rwanda. Within, I think, maximum 24 hours, you have your certificate. Once you are out there, you face challenges. You already made the huge step of taking risk. You take risk. When you face those challenges, where can you go back? This cluster, or let's say specialized cluster, as PSF called it, it's women, youth, and persons with disability. They need more of everything, more advocacy. It's an issue, access to finance, access to market. So what we are trying to do is really to work on that. When they have issues, they come back to us and we see how can we assist them. We came out with the concept of the entrepreneur's desk, which is not really a desk as such. It's a space where they can come and say, this is the issue I'm facing, I need your support. Being training, we are working with Alice and we are really thankful. Being access to market, I'm happy the young entrepreneur who came here with his idea, we are working with him because in fact, he is a solution for some of our members who are struggling to keep to show how they are selling and everything. We did connect him with I&M Bank, which will be working with MasterCard Foundation, giving collateral to those small entrepreneurs. So one of the examples of the kind of support we are giving. Again, young entrepreneurs, they are really brilliant with great ideas, but sometimes they don't have all the information. How can we assist them? Give them a space where they can access information. We had a case of more than 6,000 young entrepreneurs who did open a company. Then they don't declare at the end of the month saying it's nil. In Rwanda, everything is regulated. If you don't say that you didn't sell anything, you have penalties, which have been accumulated, and today they are stuck. Thanks enough, we want to do the advocacy to Rwanda Revenue Authority, and they are going to waive those penalties. There is a lot we really want to do. If we offer that space, we were talking about technology. We will have computers, access to internet for free for those members, which will help them to really open the mind and see how they can manage in a better way their businesses. Let's say if BPN comes and give a training, how can they apply that training to their own business? Before it was, let's go to Lemigo in a hotel, we have the breakfast or we have the lunch, we finish the training and then they go. If they have their own space, it will be much easier to come back and say, how can I apply what I did learn in my own business? We are talking about Kigali, which will be the pilot. Then we also think about people who are in Musanze and Ngororero out of the capital. How are we going to help them? It can be in the first step will be mobile. We can go there with a car and say, let's meet those young entrepreneurs, women, persons with disability who are struggling with business. Again, the way we want to do it, we have a classification in Rwanda. District was the best. We are going to begin by the worst one, where you know that people are really struggling, since even the classification made them the last one on the list. A lot is to be done. We have a lot of ideas. We are calling our partners. We are ready and open to work with all kinds of partners to get support, to advise. The doors are opened.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Therese. It sounds like so much work that you're doing to ensure that it's an inclusive process that
Yes.
is supporting youth entrepreneurs. Well done on advocacy for the entrepreneurs who ended up with penalties. And also well done on the work that, the vision that you're building to ensure that youth, women, and persons living with disability have access to markets, have access to finance, and are growing as entrepreneurs. I would like now to open up the floor to our audience. Would you have specific questions you'd like to ask to the persons on the panel to understand the Rwanda ecosystem more? Yes, we have a question there. If we have a microphone coming from the back. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My name is Tamasken. I came from Addis Ababa Science and Technology University, Ethiopia, with 5 brilliant students who are in IT department, software engineering. Alan was mentioning about the issues that we have in these days with curriculum. Most of our curriculums are the best ones, and we don't have issues with the content that we teach. But still, many companies complain, like he said, they do not have that sufficient skills that are required by companies. So I wanted to know what should be done and your experience in Rwanda, that at least at government level or at policy level, what curriculums should do. Some countries encourage, for example, entrepreneurship mindset to create some skill developments on campus. Some say internship programs that the students should go for at least a semester or 2 semesters for to be an intern in companies like yours. So I wanted to know the Rwandan experience to enrich universities' curriculum to enhance such a mindset and also such skill to develop from while they are on campus. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. Do we have anyone else in the room with a question? I think that's a very rich question because I think it feeds to some of our initial discussions earlier where we were talking about the person. So I'll invite Alain to respond around, when we talk about talent, is it really about the skills or is it about the person? And I think after that, it would be great to hear from you, Alice, as well. When we talk about building the entrepreneurship ecosystem, are we talking about building enterprises or are we talking about building the entrepreneur? And what type of person are we trying to build and how do we get there? Let's start with you, Alain. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for your question. And I mean, you are absolutely right in the sense that what companies, and believe me, it's not only in Ethiopia that you're facing this kind of problem. I think even in Rwanda, there is still that quote unquote misconception that anyone undergraduate just finishing their undergraduate studies comes to a company ready to be productive the minute they're hired, right? In some cases, very few cases, that is true. And those individuals, it's not because they were, yeah, they could have been the best at the university, but it's because they tried to improve themselves beyond what the universities were giving them. Maybe they had some side project on the side that they were doing, right? Most of our university graduates are actually doing that. They basically start coding and immediately they have some ideas that they want to explore, that they want to build on. When those people get in the on-the-job market, they have something extra compared to somebody else that just followed the curriculum, the traditional curriculum as it had been given. But what I'm trying to say here is, on the side of the companies, we also need to kind of like lower the expectations a little bit, right? It's really not fair because it's not the case in the US, right? It's not the case. That's why we have what we call a junior developer, a mid-level developer, a senior developer, an expert, or whatever, right? All that is not because they came out of university and because of what they're able to do, they immediately become seniors, right? It's because that experience that they acquired through the practical jobs that they're doing inside the companies is really what made them reach that level. So if we don't give space to our undergraduates or to our graduates in undergrads level schools to actually give them that chance to come into our companies and learn from being mentored by senior developers, to expect them that they're immediately going to be able to contribute is in some cases unfair, right? Because I don't think that's how it works in those developed countries, because they basically have many companies that are able to hire juniors and then build them to the levels where now they could basically now be considered productive inside their companies without necessarily feeling like we are the ones spending money on them and not them contributing. So what we're doing, basically, because I understand that nuance in my company, what we do is whatever project that we're getting, I make sure people that I'm hiring, I am pairing them with senior developers. There are things that we do. You pair them with senior developers. You do what we call pair programming, where they just sit there and then just look over the shoulder of somebody else doing the coding, right? And then it gets to their turn, they start doing their task, and a senior developer is also looking over their shoulder, right? Those are things that I'm not saying it's just tactics. You can use different techniques inside your companies to basically foster and encourage those people to improve. But then, to your comment, Grace, it's also on the individual now, on the individual coming into our companies to also understand that because you have finished university, learning does not stop there, right? You have to be willing and humble enough to want to first learn, but also to want to do it on your own time, right? Improve yourself, not always just thinking that I'm going to improve because of the 8 hours that I'm spending in Wayaden, right? If I really want to improve, there is those 8 hours I'm spending in Wayaden, but then when I go home, there's a little bit more that I could do to go past, to go beyond that, right? So those soft skills, right, if I can call it that, are also needed for on the individual side. I talked what our companies need to do to lower the expectations a little bit, but also on the individuals, they also need to understand that there is a little bit more that they can also do, right, to improve on the skills that they acquired at the university without necessarily waiting for companies to train them or another training opportunity to come in, right? And so that's probably software engineering is probably the only sector that I know of where you can basically go from 0 to 100 on your own, right? By doing things on your own.
Thank you very much, Alain. Alice, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Grace. Yes, it's an interesting question indeed. How to improve or upgrade the entrepreneurship curriculum that you are offering, right? I see different aspects. One aspect is sometimes we tend to romanticize entrepreneurship. You know, just do it, have a great idea, and then you go. Entrepreneurship is a hard journey. It's not easy, and people need to know that from the beginning. And not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur that will grow and scale. We should not make the mistake to give everyone the impression that they will become the next Bill Gates of the world if they just work hard. It requires also a certain personality. So it's not given to everyone to become an entrepreneur, especially an entrepreneur that scales and that transforms industries. Another aspect that I believe is important to look at is also to the culture of finances, how to handle finances, what it means. I think that part is very often not really made part of you as a person, but more like the technical level of it. So really understanding where the money comes from and why, and your role as an entrepreneur. I believe it's very important that entrepreneurs, and especially when they are still at the university and they're aspiring to become entrepreneurs, that they understand that it also comes with a responsibility. And the responsibility of managing resources that you're going to receive, responsibility of changing your industry. So as I said before, as a country, we have put a lot of effort in putting things in place that people can do business. We have a conducive business environment. And when I look back 10 years ago when we started, when you wanted, for example, something for standardization, when you needed a specific document, you had to go 10 times, go back, bring this, come back, this is missing. Today, you get all those information online, and young entrepreneurs are trained. They get the information for free about all those available systems and regulations that they need. They get advocacy from the Private Sector Federation and so on. So where I see also an important aspect that to be given to the young entrepreneurs at early stage, it also to be part of the solution, to not feel like we are entitled. I'm doing business and things should happen around me, but I have to be part of the solution. So we need much more bottom-up input in those regulations, in those solutions that are available. If it's difficult to do it alone, get together and fight for change. Be part of the solution. Be a You know, it does not have to be revolutionary, but it has to be part of contributing to the industry because you are in it. You see what works and what doesn't. So taking that responsibility as an entrepreneur is very important, that you have that mindset from the beginning. So not a sense of entitlement and being passive and waiting that things happen, but also standing up ready for change. And yes, so I believe one important aspect is understanding that as an entrepreneur, you are a leader. So entrepreneurship, it's not a decision that you take. It's a process in which you grow as a leader and you take a responsibility. And if you go out with that mindset, you will not only grow your own businesses, but you will also contribute to the ecosystem and to the economy at large. Yes. Yeah. I do hope we answered your question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Alice. And I think I'll just open up for one more question. And as we respond to it, we lead to the closing of the conversation. So the gentleman at the back.
Thank you so much, moderator. I'm Nicholas from Davis College, Aquila. And my question is, looking at the African setting, when we look at the African continent, we have a lot of the informal sector playing a very large role to the development. We look at the contribution to the economy and vis-a-vis or versus the employment that it does, if we look at the future of the economy, we look at the future of entrepreneurship, we look at the future of the work, where we are shifting, like working, we are becoming so digital, We are having two sectors, we are in a dualistic economy, right? And there will always be the poor versus the rich. There will always be the educated versus uneducated. So how do you see, what is your take on the informal sector employing a variety of people as per the population of the country versus, development? Like, what is your take? If we modernize the informal sector, where is it going to, what are we going to do behind? Because we know that there are some sectors that may be hard to modernize. The more you modernize them, it may become quite hard for the people to live what they're doing. So what is your take on modernizing the informal sector, shifting from the informal sector to the formal sector? What will it leave behind? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the question. I think it's a very interesting one, and I would like to pose it to Mr. Yves Iradukunda, because it's both a policy and also, when we think about modernizing the informal sector, technology has a huge role to what we're seeing in terms of doing that. So would we please hear from you, and then also hear from Madame Therese, also leading to some concluding thoughts on the whole conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I'll try to answer the question from a perspective of digitization. I think one of the things that we've been focusing on here in Rwanda is to avail the services through digital means to the citizens. So many of you may be familiar with Vilembo Gov, which is a single portal for citizens to access services. Now, within that same model, we look at our economic sectors. It's agriculture, it's trade, it's tourism, among others. And so how can we avail services that a farmer needs, or that a trader needs, or that a tourist or services to tourists need? How can we avail these services through digital means? So a lot has to do with payment, e-payments or digital payments channels that are affordable and accessible, but also a lot of it has to do with the digitizing of the process in which these services or products are consumed. So that's maybe the journey that we're on. We've covered a lot on the front of government services to the citizens. We're doing a lot more, but we are encouraging more solutions that are focused to those key sectors. And so I would say it's a journey and it's a commitment from the point of view of the government. The informal sector contributes significantly to the economy. And I believe even the example that we saw from the entrepreneur earlier, being able to empower a small business owner to access financial products from a bank, that's very key. And so from a perspective of enabling entrepreneurs and creating opportunities, I think a lot more needs to be done. And I would say that because of the government of Rwanda leading the way from government services to the citizens, we're seeing openness within the business sector to digitize some of these processes and enable the business owners.
Thank you very much, PS. If I hear you well, enabling the small businesses is what we're referring to as modernization, and digitization as well as financial inclusion is one of the things that are some of the things that are being done currently.
Absolutely. Okay, now I'm audible. Absolutely. I would add, again, building also capacity. So we have digital ambassadors that are training citizens on how to use smartphones. We're also looking at different smartphone acquisition or smart devices acquisition programs from a financing perspective, but also from sort of models that enable the device ownership. So I think it's a whole range of different things that have to be done. Network penetration and quality of it, among many other things. But I would say, really, when you take a point of view of service delivery, I think it makes it clear in terms of how do these businesses become modernized, but also digitized, and the data allows to integrate them into the broader ecosystem, financial services, among others.
Thank you very much. That's a brilliant take. And I would love to hear as well from Madame Therese, because she works with many of the small businesses. We maybe not necessarily informal, but quite much formalizing
Yes.
from the informal. So what is your take on that?
Yes. In fact, I think most of people who are informal, they are informal because of lack of information. They don't know what they are losing by being informal. Let me take an example where you have a lot of informal businesses, agriculture. And again, let's talk about Rwanda and the ecosystem, how it's built. In agriculture, if you have your business up to 12 million, you are not paying taxes. So there is no need to hide yourself or to not use the EBM machine, to use those machines. In Rwanda, in fact, for those who don't know, you cannot buy something without getting a EBM machine. Those who are informal are the one not giving the EBM machine. So there are some advantages. Between 12 million and 20 million in agriculture, you pay, I think, 8%. If you are formal, you can go to the bank. If you are formal, you can access grants, which is money for free. If you are formal, you can get trainings. I think people are just with lack of information and how the ecosystem is built. It's one of the main reasons why they are informal. What we are doing is really to go there, speak with them, put ambassadors, as the PS said, to explain to people up to the what we call the mudugudu, really deep in the village. Don't be informal. There is no need. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame Therese. I would like to now help the panel come to a conclusion. We have policymakers in the room, we have academia, we have entrepreneurs, founders. I think we'll have young people, many of the students following us. So what's your final take in a minute in terms of your call to action, your words of encouragement as regards the Rwanda ecosystem? let's start with Alain and then come all the way.
So I'll just say a few words. There are benefits to being an entrepreneur, right? I guess everybody that's here is a converted, right? If you're in this session, that's probably you're looking at that on that side. But basically, the benefits are what? As an entrepreneur, this is basically where you do things that align with your core values, right? So there are things that you really want to do or you have dreamed about doing. If you join somebody else, you're basically going to be implementing their vision, right? You're going to be following their core values. As an entrepreneur, you're basically aligning your business to your core values, no matter what they are. Saving the planet, improving, giving access to finance to the unbanked, many things that you can follow. The other thing also of the other benefit is this is the only place where you have to constantly, you are pushed to be constantly improving on your skill sets. Because if you don't do that, then you most likely you're going to be run out of business.
Over to you, Madame Therese.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that some students are following. In secondary school, they have what they call entrepreneur club. We are going there to explain to them what is to be an entrepreneur. First of all, and please don't take it wrong, when you want to be an entrepreneur, don't tell yourself that there is no one who owes you anything. You build yourself. But the system is there. Facilities are there. People who did succeed in business are there to advise you. There is a lot which can be done. Just be consistent, stuck on your ideas, accept failures. If you fail in business, it doesn't mean that you are weak. You just count the number of times you stand up again and keep fighting. So I think the ecosystem in Rwanda is really well built. Organizations are there to assist you. People are there to assist you. Just stuck on your ideas, be consistent, be perseverant. There is a lot I can say if I was speaking in French, but we are there to help you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Madame Alice?
Yes. I would say two things. One is there's no shortcut to success. And the second one is the founder is the joker. So everything will start with you as an entrepreneur and will end with you. So it's extremely important who you are. So build yourself, have the right set of values on which you build personally and in your business. Be ready to work hard. And because there's no free lunch, even if there are grants left and right, the grants will, at some point, they will dry out. So it's important that you work hard and you have your own strategies and take good care of yourself. Be healthy, make sure you have your wellness, your balance, your friend, you have a strong support system around you. You need all those things to be able to be a good joker that brings success and sustainable success. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those words of wisdom. Now we pass on to Mr. Daniel.
Thank you, Grace, and I want also to say thank you to Bemi for the invitation. The last word I will say, for this forum is that when you think of green growth, think about it in terms of meaningful participatory approach, whether it be from a policy angle to designing your project or even assessing the resources that you need to implement. Meaningful participation for the fact that all that we are talking here, awareness creation, information, passing information to those who need state, is all about the fact that I need to get everybody on board so that we understand our role. So as an entrepreneur, when you are a founder, co-founder, it means you should understand that the co means that my decision-making should involve the other person, even though I might have all the great ideas to think systemically. So meaningful participation that engages every aspect of the stakeholders. And here, stakeholders is not just about the people, but the environment, the society, the economy is the way to go for success and sustainability.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we pass on to Mr. Yves Iradukunda.
Thank you very much, and it's been a great conversation. I think the couple of things I would say. One, we believe that entrepreneurship, and particularly entrepreneurial innovation, will be very important in solving our problems and creating sustainable development. There is no doubt about it. What I can say to particularly entrepreneurs, especially youth following, is that we believe that their efforts can be rewarded if they really focus on growing their ideas. So the ecosystem is there, this has been said. And what we're doing at the ministry is really to make sure that there is access to market, starting even with government procurement through the new procurement law. So again, to commit that as government, we're here to work with different partners to really do all we can to support the growing ecosystem, to unlock different opportunities, be it investment, access to market, among others. So again, very excited that this conversation is happening and look forward to how we continue to work together within the ecosystem to make progress.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. A huge thank you to Carnegie Mellon University for the opportunity to have this conversation. Ms. Disu, thank you so much. And thank you to our esteemed panelists for making this a very interesting conversation. I hope it was informative for everyone. And we conclude our session now. Over to you. Thank you.